This is how you know something is wrong. The audience stops clapping. They don't know why at first. They just feel it that night. Inside the Avalon Theater, there was music, lights, laughter. And then one sound cut through everything, not the gunshot. The scream, the one scream, when everyone realized the actress wasn't acting anymore. Yeah, that's the moment I keep going back to. Stick with me till the end of this. Because before she died, she recorded something. And someone tried to kill me to make sure it never saw daylight. My name is Rafe Quinn, and this is one of those cases that follows you home at night. I was in my office that evening. New Orleans winter. Cold enough that the windows fogged and the city looked like it was hiding secrets. I had coffee gone stale on my desk. Old records humming low. Case files stacked like they were watching me fail. Then the phone rang. And when my phone rings past midnight, nothing good follows. Quinn, we've got a body. The voice belonged to Captain Hale. Good cop, bad sleep. He paused, which he never does, and then added, during a live theater show. Live show murder. Hell of a way to ruin a night. I grabbed my coat and headed out. The Avalon Theater has history written into its walls. Red velvet curtains. Gold trim. Dust that remembers faces tonight. It remembered blood. Polished lights washed the street in blue. Crowds were pressed up behind barricades. Whispers moved faster than truth ever could. On stage, under a white spotlight that didn't feel white anymore. The stain was still there. The actress's name was Melissa Roy. She'd taken a bullet to the chest during a dramatic scene. Only the gun wasn't supposed to be real. The man who fired it, Victor Dane, sat at the edge of the stage, shaking. He looked at me like a drowning man looks at the surface. Quinn, it was a prop gun. It's always been a prop. Why the hell would I kill her? I studied him on anything about guilt. It likes to live in the eyes. His were full of shock, fear, grief, but not calculation. Didn't clear him, didn't damn him. Just meant the truth was more complicated. The theater owner stormed back and forth. Name was Richard Bowes, expensive suit, cheap conscience. I've seen his type. He cared more about the reporters than the corpse. That always tells me something. They covered the body. But even under the sheet, the room felt wrong, like the walls were holding their breath. I walked backstage, props, costumes, makeup mirrors, and then the smell that doesn't belong to theater, gun oil. A small plastic bottle sat tucked behind a crate. Fresh beside it, empty gloves package. Someone had cleaned that weapon like they wanted it to look harmless. Melissa's dressing room told the rest of the story. Perfume, photographs, a cracked mirror taped on the corner like it had history. Then we found the letter. Torn envelope, yellowed paper, anger trapped in ink. If you testify against me, I will burn every secret you ever tried to hide. I'm not afraid of you, only signed with a single initial, M, blackmail, fear. The three ingredients that most murders start with, no matter what the weapon is. I remember looking at my reflection in that cracked mirror, thinking, someone will switch that gun on purpose. Someone rehearsed murder better than the play. And somewhere in the dark rows of empty seats, someone was still watching. I leaned on the windowsill and listened to the distant city noise. Cases like this, they never start where the body falls. They start years earlier, in the part of somebody's life they hoped no one would ever dig up. And digging, well, that's what I do. Before we go any further, do me a favor. If stories like this pull you in, subscribe, stick with me, and don't miss what comes next, because this one only gets darker from here. And trust me, we're just getting started. The Avalon emptied slowly that night. Crowds don't leave right away after death. They hover, whisper, stare at doors like answers might walk out of them. Cops marked floors, cameras flashed, and in the middle of all that noise, the building itself felt quiet. Old theaters do that. They swallow sound when something ugly happens. Captain Hale walked up beside me, rubbing the bridge of his nose. Quinn, witnesses say the shot was part of the scene. No one panicked at first. Of course they didn't. Murder that looks like acting is the most convincing kind. I knelt near the edge of the stage. Blood darkens wood in a way that sticks with you. You think you get used to it. You don't. The revolver sat on a small table, tagged and bagged. Heavy steel, not stage plastic. Simonin had swapped it in plain sight and trusted the script to finish the job. Victor Dane sat nearby, elbows on his knees, shaking like his bones were cold. I walked over. "Did you check the gun before the show?" He swallowed hard. "Same as always. Same prop, same scene. I never would have done this." His voice cracked on the last word. Grief is messy. Guilt is sharp. He wasn't sharp. He was shattered. Didn't prove innocence, but it painted a picture. "Tell me about Melissa," I asked quietly. He stared at the stage instead of me. "We were close once. Then she pulled back, said she didn't want anything serious. Said it messed with her head, with the work." He shook his head. "I loved her, but I wouldn't kill her. Love doesn't stop people from killing. Sometimes it's the reason. But something in that room felt bigger than a breakup. Backstage held the real answers. The smell hit first, faint, metallic, wrong, gun oil, not stage polish, not makeup chemicals. Beside a stack of costume trunks sat a small plastic bottle with its cap off, and next to it, an empty pair of latex glove wrappers. Simone had cleaned a weapon here recently, not to shine it, to erase it. I looked at Hale. This wasn't an accident. He nodded once. We headed into Melissa's dressing room. Everything was organized in that careful way people use to control chaos. Perfect rows of lipstick, notes taped to mirrors, photographs pinned with tiny gold tacks. And then the crack in the perfection, a torn envelope in a broken drawer, AA letter inside. The handwriting pressed deep into the paper like anger had weight. "If you testify against me, I will burn your secrets to the ground. I'm not scared of you." Signed only with the letter M. People don't write threats unless someone has something worth silencing. I thought about the switched gun, the gloves, the oil. This wasn't some heat of the moment jealousy hit. This was prepped, rehearsed, directed. A murder staged to look like theater, inside a theater. In one of the framed photos on the wall, Melissa stood smiling between two men. One was the theater owner, Richard Bowes. The other, a face I didn't recognize. But Melissa's smile in that picture wasn't joy. It was the kind people wear when they're trying to look okay. I'd seen it 1,000 times. Hale leaned in the doorway. "What are you thinking, Quinn?" I didn't answer right away, because the truth was already creeping in around the edges. This didn't start today. This didn't start with a gun. This started in the past, and the past has teeth. When we stepped back out into the main hall, the lights were dimmed. Rows of empty seats stretched out like a silent jury. Somewhere out there, in those shadows, someone knew exactly how Melissa died. Someone watched it happen, and someone was already thinking about what else they'd have to do to keep the rest of us quiet. I pulled my coat tighter. Cases like this don't warn you before they bite, but something told me this one already had. There's a rule I learned early in this job. When someone dies loud, the reason usually lives quiet. We left the stage lights behind and stepped out into the frozen New Orleans night. Fog hung low, wrapping the streetlights in halos like the city was pretending to be innocent. Melissa Roy star on the poster, body on the floor, and somewhere between those two versions of her was the truth. Back at my office, the letter sat on my desk, lit by a single lamp. If you testify against me, I will burn your secrets to the ground. No names, no dates, just pressure. Threat letters don't scare people who have nothing to hide. They scare the ones who've lived through something they never wanted to relive. I leaned back in my chair and listened to the building creak. The city has a way of talking if you sit still long enough. My partner, Logan, sharp eyes, runs on caffeine and bad decisions, dropped a folder on my desk. Pulled some background on Melissa, he said. There's something you should see. Her life didn't. She transferred cities, changed apartments, changed friend circles more than once. That doesn't happen without a reason. Then I saw it, a mention buried in an old theater brochure from years back, Mountain Theater Retreat. Small cast, private camp year, 1981. The same year mentioned in the diary we found. You ever feel a case? Click. Pieces don't make sense until suddenly they all do. People think time heals everything. They're wrong. Time hides things. We went through her personal diary next, and that's where the mask came off. She'd written about a night years ago. She couldn't forget. A senior actor. A room. Hands where they shouldn't have been. A voice telling her not to make it a big deal. Fear doesn't always scream. Sometimes it just stays. She hinted at something else, too. The accident everyone talked about back then. A car crash, brakes failing, crowd calling it fate. But Melissa never called it fate. She called it what it was, murder wearing an accident's coat. And the name floating around those pages, more than any other. Richard Bowes, the same Richard who now owned the Avalon. The same Richard who filed the insurance, claimed 2 days after she died. The past and present weren't separate lines. They were the same thread. You just had to tug it. I closed the diary slowly. People don't kill because of what's happening now. They kill because of what they're afraid might happen next. Melissa was going to talk. Somebody decided she wouldn't. Night pressed against the windows, heavy and cold. Logan looked at me. You think whoever killed that actor back then killed her too? I nodded. Or they ordered it. Or they covered it. Or they paid for it. Silence settled in the room like smoke. That's when the first warning came. Glass rattled. Distant echo, metallic crack. That doesn't get mistaken for firecrackers when you've been around it long enough. Gunshot. Brick dust showered off the wall next to my head. Down. Logan shouted, yanking me sideways as another round tore past the window frame. Outside, through the fog, a shadow moved. Fast, trained, not panicked. Boots splashing through puddles. Dark coat disappearing around the corner. I chased anyway. Adrenaline makes bad ideas feel smart. But by the time I hit the street, the figure was gone. The city swallowed them like it promised not to tell. I stood there, breath fogging the air, heart pounding steady instead of fast. Simone out there didn't want 1981 mentioned again. Simone out there thought a warning shot would slow me down. They were wrong. It just proved one thing. We were finally walking in the right direction. Fog rolled across the road like something alive. I whispered it more to myself than anyone else. The past isn't done yet, and neither was I. Sleep doesn't come easy when someone just tried to put a bullet through your head. The city outside my window kept moving like nothing happened. Traffic murmurs, distant horns, a train groaning somewhere out past the river. But inside the office, everything felt still. The letter, the diary, the gunshot. 3 pieces of a puzzle that didn't want to be solved. Logan paced the floor, hands on his hips. That wasn't a scare shot, he muttered. Whoever pulled that trigger knew exactly where you were standing. He was right. Amateurs spray bullets. Professionals place them. And that round had kissed brick an inch from my skull. I poured coffee I didn't need and didn't taste. If someone wants us off this case, I said quietly, it means this case is finally touching something real. He stopped pacing. You think this ties straight back to 81? I don't think, I said. I know. People don't risk murder in public during a live show unless they're desperate. Desperation comes from history, not impulse. We laid everything out on the table. Photo of Melissa with 2 men, insurance paperwork, threat letter, notes from the old theater retreat, and right in the middle of it, Richard Bowes, the smiling owner, debt up to his neck, insurance filed in record time, convenient witness to a brake failure accident years ago. His face stared back at me from the photograph, frozen in a party grin. Some people smile with their mouths. He smiled with his ego. I tapped the photo. He's our storm center. Logan nodded slowly. You want to bring him in? Not yet, I said. Not until he's scared. Fear makes people talk, and Richard still thought he was untouchable. That needed to change. We went back to the Avalon the next morning. Empty hall. Cold seats. The ghost of applause that would never come again. The stage crew moved quiet, the way people do when death has walked through a room recently. One of the older tech guys, gray beard, tired eyes, came up to me like he'd been waiting all night to do it. He held out a cassette tape. Miss Roy asked me to keep this safe, he whispered. Said if anything happened to her, give it to someone who would actually listen. I felt the weight of it in my palm, old plastic, worn label, secret trapped inside. Melissa knew she was in danger. People don't leave recordings for fun. She knew something that scared killers. That alone told me this case wasn't about jealousy, or a bad breakup, or a splintered friendship. It was about truth, and truth scares the worst kind of men. On the way out the back exit of the theater, the air felt heavier, like the city itself was watching. Logan held the door open. You think the shooter from last night was trying to stop us from getting that tape? I shook my head. No, I said. I think they were warning us what happens if we play it. We didn't go back to the office. We didn't go home. We drove. No routine, no pattern, no predictable place to corner us. When someone misses once, they usually don't miss twice. We pulled into a lonely stretch by the river, where the only witnesses were old trees and slow water. The cassette slid into the player with a soft click, static, a breath, then her voice. Melissa, not the stage version, not the interviews, the real one, shaking, angry, done being quiet. If you're hearing this, something happened to me. Logan and I locked eyes but said nothing. I've kept quiet for years about 1981. I shouldn't have. Richard said he'd protect me, said my pain was his pain. I believed him. The wind moved across the water like it was listening too. She inhaled sharply on the tape. But he didn't protect me. He avenged me. And he enjoyed it. My jaw tightened. She continued. He killed Ash. The word clipped off into a burst of static, like the tape itself didn't want the name spoken. Then her voice returned, smaller now. And now he says if I talk, I'll disappear too. Silence filled the car after the tape clicked off. Not peaceful silence. The kind before storms break windows, Logan whispered. She knew she was dead. I nodded. She knew, and she still recorded it. That's courage. That's also a death sentence when the wrong people are listening. I leaned back against the seat and let the weight of it settle. Richard didn't love Melissa. He possessed her story, her pain, her fear, and wrapped it around his ego. He killed once in the past. And when that past got loud again, he killed again. Only this time he wrapped it inside theater lights so the world would clap while she died. The river rolled by like it didn't care about any of it. The city lights flickered in the distance. And somewhere out there, the man who thought he'd written the ending to this story had no idea he'd just landed in mine. Logan broke the silence. So what now? I looked at the empty road ahead and said the only thing that made sense. There's a moment in every case when it stops being about paperwork and becomes personal. That moment just arrived. The tape changed everything. Melissa wasn't just scared. She was certain someone would silence her, certain who that someone was. And still, she spoke into that recorder anyway. Courage like that deserves justice. Or at the very least. We left the river and headed back toward the city. The road was quiet, streetlights passing in slow rhythm, like a heartbeat that didn't trust itself. Logan broke the silence first. You know what this means, right? Richard didn't just cover up an accident back then. He orchestrated it. I nodded. He built his life on it. Money, reputation. Now Melissa threatens to rip the floorboards up. People don't kill to protect the present. They kill to protect the life they built on lies. By the time we reached my office, the air felt different. Like the city already knew which way the story was turning. I unlocked the door. The lock was soft. Not tight the way I left it. That's never a good sign. My hand tightened around the knob, and I pushed the door open slow. The office was dark. Too dark. The type of dark where the shadows feel like they might blink. We stepped inside. A faint smell hit me, metal and sulfur. Gunpowder's quieter cousin, Logan whispered. Quinn. I saw it at the same time he did. Glass on the floor. A bullet lodged in the side of the filing cabinet. Second warning. Samey message. This time it wasn't a miss. This time it said, we know where you live. I walked to the window and looked out. The street below was empty, but that didn't mean anything. Killers don't wave from doorways. They watch. They wait. They make you feel like you're in someone else's house, even when you're standing in your own office. Logan locked the door behind us out of habit more than hope. You thinking what I'm thinking? He asked. Yeah, I said, we've got two choices. Back off, or pull the mask off completely. He cracked a humorless smile. When have you ever taken the first one? He wasn't wrong. This job doesn't let you be halfway brave. You're in or you're out. I pulled the evidence together in a neat line on my desk. Threat letter with the M insurance claim. Photo of Melissa and Richard tape recording. And one empty space. Proof. We had story. We had motive. We had blood. But courtrooms don't care about that unless you can prove the hands that held the gun. That proof was still out there. Breathing planning, confident. Richard thought the world worked on stage cues. Lights up, lights down. Bow, curtain. Real life is messier. You don't get to rehearse the part where truth shows up. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered anyway. The voice on the other end was disguised, compressed, low, run through some cheap voice modulator app. But fear makes people sloppy. Stop digging, Quinn, it said. The past is buried for a reason. I didn't answer. There won't be another warning. Click silence. Logan let out a slow breath. So now it's official, he said. We're not investigating anymore. We're being hunted. I finished for him. A strange calm came over me. Not bravado, not courage, just clarity. If someone was willing to kill on a stage, fire through my window, gas a train car, and stalk my office, then they were already committed, which meant they were also already exposed. People think killers are shadows. They're wrong. Shadows don't move on their own. Someone always casts them. I walked to the mirror, straightened my coat, and stared at my tired reflection. All right, I whispered to no one and everyone. You want me scared? You should have done it right the first time. Outside, the night deepened. Somewhere across the city, a powerful man sat thinking he still controlled the story. He didn't realize something important. The moment you try to kill a detective, the case stops being just a case. It becomes a hunt. And this time, I wasn't the one being chased anymore. Powerful men make the same mistake. They start thinking rooms belong to them. People belong to them. Stories belong to them. And when reality pushes back, they panic. Richard Bowes was exactly that type. We finally walked into his world the next morning. Big office overlooking the city. Glass walls. Art no one actually feels anything about. He smiled when he ever saw him. Real innocent people don't smile when detectives show up uninvited. Rafe Quinn, he said, like he was greeting an old friend. I've heard of you. Most people who say that don't mean it like a compliment, I replied. He laughed. It didn't reach his eyes. Logan leaned against the wall, saying nothing. Just watching. He's good at that. Makes liars sweat. I stayed standing. I wanted him uncomfortable enough to talk. We're here about Melissa Roy, I said. His expression shifted just enough for me to see the crack. Not grief, not heartbreak, annoyance. Terrible tragedy, he said flatly. The theater community has lost a shining. Save the speech, I cut in gently. I'm not press. Silence settled between us. I laid a photograph on his desk, Melissa standing next to him years ago, and another man cropped half in frame. You knew her a long time, I said. He leaned back in his chair. Yes, he admitted. She was important to my company. Important to my company. Not to me, not to my life. To my company. Language betrays more than mistakes. What about 1981? I asked casually. He didn't move, but something in his eyes did. Just a flicker, a single second, where the mask slid an inch. I don't know what you're referring to. He replied smoothly. Liars always say they don't know what you're referring to. I placed one more item on his desk, the cassette tape. Unlabeled, old, harmless looking. But his face changed like I'd set a live snake down in front of him. His hand twitched. That was it. Confirmation without confession. Logan noticed too. You recognize it, he said quietly. Richard swallowed. I recognize junk when I see it. He was lying and we all knew it. The room suddenly felt smaller. The city outside the window felt farther away. I leaned in just slightly. She was going to testify, I said. Not about jealousy, not about theater drama, about the past. His jaw tightened. Be careful what you're suggesting, Quinn. I'm not suggesting, I said calmly. I'm connecting dots. He stood now, defensive, coiled. You think I had Melissa killed? No, I replied. I think Melissa was already dead the minute she stopped being afraid of you. His nostrils flared. He didn't deny it this time. He didn't need to. Guilt changes the air in a room, thickens it, turns it heavy like a storm waiting to break. I gathered the tape and photo, then turned for the door. He called after me, Quinn. I stopped. He didn't smirk this time, didn't pretend control. You have no idea what you're walking into, he said softly. That's when you know you're close. When threats start sounding like advice, I met his eyes one last time. I know exactly what I'm walking into, I answered. A man who's afraid of the truth. We walked out without another word. The hallway felt colder. Logan blew out a breath. He's cracking, he said. Yeah, I nodded, but a cornered animal is more dangerous. Richard wasn't a mastermind. He was a coward with resources, and cowards with resources don't go down quietly. The elevator doors closed and sealed us in a mirrored box with our reflections. Somewhere between floors, it hit both of us at the same time. He wasn't just warning us, he was planning something. Something soon, something final. Logan looked at me. You think he'll try again? I nodded slowly. Yeah, I said. Then I added the part that surprised even me. And this time, he won't miss by accident. Outside, the city buzzed like nothing was wrong, but the case had crossed another invisible line. Warnings were over. We had officially entered the part of the story where people stop talking and start eliminating problems. And tonight, the problem was me. Every city has places nobody advertises. Streets without names, warehouses with lights that flicker, but doors that never open. Places where people don't come back from once they step inside. The address on that folded paper led us straight there. We drove toward the river. Fewer lights. More shadows, pavement cracked under the tires like old bones. The smell changed too. Oil, rust, and cold water. That smell always means trouble. Logan glanced over at me. You know, this is bait, he said. Yeah, and we're still going. Yeah. He didn't argue. That's why he's my partner. He complains just enough to remind me we're human, then walks straight into hell anyway. We parked a block away and finished on foot. No talking. Just the sound of gravel under our shoes and river water slapping against wood pilings. The warehouse sat ahead of us. Big, rusted ribs, broken windows, one tired bulb blinking above a side door. The door wasn't locked. That's the worst sign there is. Locked doors say stay out. Unlocked doors say come in. We're waiting. Inside, the dark swallowed us. Our footsteps echoed up into steel rafters. Crates were stacked everywhere, dust floating in the air like time forgot to move. Then a single hanging light clicked on overhead and carved out a small yellow circle on the floor. In that circle sat a wooden chair, empty, waiting. Rope coiled neatly beside it. Logan muttered, "They set the scene." "They're theater people," I said. Of course they did. A slow clap echoed through the building. Richard Bowes stepped out of the shadows. Tailored coat. Practiced smile. Two men behind him with faces that looked like they never practiced smiling at all. "I honestly thought you'd already be in that chair," he said. "I have bad posture," I replied. His smile thinned. He spread his hands like he owned the place, and us with it. "You could have walked away," he said, "but you kept digging. That's what I do." I said, "You bury things, I find shovels." The mask fell off his face just a little. Not anger, fear. "You don't understand," he snapped. "Melissa was going to destroy everything. My company, my reputation. One accusation from decades ago, and people don't wait for facts. They just want someone to burn." "You already burn people?" I answered. Silence stretched tight. His voice lowered. "I killed for her back then," he whispered. "He hurt her. I made sure he didn't again. Nobody else would. I fixed it. That wasn't justice." I said, "That was control. You didn't protect her story. You took it." He stepped closer, and when she said she would expose everything, she was going to expose herself too. "You call that kindness? I call it her choice," I said. That was the breaking point. He nodded once to his men. Hands went inside jackets. Bad idea. The warehouse exploded into motion. Shot cracked off steel beams. Logan slammed one man into crates, gun clattering across concrete. I twisted the second man's wrist until his fingers forgot how triggers worked. He went down hard and stayed there. When it ended, only Richard was standing. No mask now. Just a man cornered by the truth. He reached inside his coat. I drew and leveled. Don't. He froze. The siren started faint in the distance, growing, closing. Logan must have already called it in. He thinks ahead. I jump first. That's why we're still alive. Richard's shoulders sagged. He dropped into the very chair he wanted me in. Fitting. I didn't mean for it to go this far, he whispered. It always goes this far. Not because fate pushes it, but because lies do. Blue and red light flickered through the dirty windows. The rope lay unused at his feet. His men groaned on the floor. The game he thought he controlled was over. He stared up at me like a drowning man, asking the water for mercy. Theater owners think they control the ending. But endings don't belong to them. They belong to the truth. And right there, in that forgotten warehouse by the river, the truth finally took the stage. By the time we hit the street, the sky had that dull gray color that makes the whole city feel tired. Logan slid his hands into his pockets. He knows we have the tape, he said. Yeah, I replied. And now he knows we're not bluffing. That changed the game. Information is leverage. And leverage gets you killed if you don't know how to hold it. We didn't go back to the office. We didn't go home either. Patterns get you buried. Instead, we stopped at a quiet diner on the edge of town. Booths cracked with age. Coffee that could clean rust. A jukebox in the corner that hadn't worked right since the 80s. Perfect place to think. Loud enough to blend in. Quiet enough to hear trouble coming. We slid into a corner booth. The cassette sat between us like a live grenade. Logan stared at it. You think what's on there is enough to put him away? I shook my head. Not by itself. A confession is good. A pattern is better. Proof is best. We've got a body on stage, he said. An accident in 1981. Threat letters. An insurance claim filed so fast it was practically waiting to be signed. And a man who panics when he hears the sound of plastic clicking into a tape deck, I added. The waitress topped off our cups. She didn't notice the way I watched the door in the reflection of the chrome napkin holder. Experience teaches you paranoia. Survival teaches you. It's not paranoia if they really are following you. Logan leaned in. Play it again, he said softly. I slid the cassette into the small recorder and hit play static. Then Melissa's voice, if you're hearing this, I didn't make it. That line alone could put ice in your veins. She talked about fear, about the night in 1981, about the man who said, your pain is my pain, and then turned that phrase into something twisted. Then her voice changed. Not scared anymore. Steady. Richard thinks he owns what happened to me. He doesn't. I do. And if he tries to shut me up again, the world will hear everything. The world didn't. But we did. The tape clicked to a stop. We sat there listening to the hum of the diner for a few seconds. Logan finally exhaled. She was ready to burn his whole life down, he said. Yeah, I replied quietly, and he couldn't let that happen. Sometimes people don't kill for hate or for love or out of rage. Sometimes they kill for control. A shadow fell over our table, boots, long coat, hat brim low. He slid into the seat across from us without asking. Everything in my body tightened. But my face didn't show it. He kept his hands where I could see them. Smart. I kept mine low, but ready, smarter. You boys are digging in the wrong places, he said calmly. Not a threat. A statement. His voice had the same tone as people who have carried guns longer than they've carried regrets. Logan tensed beside me. And who are you? I asked. He smirked slightly. Simone, who's trying to keep you alive. That's never comforting. He glanced at the recorder. That tape, men have died for less. I didn't blink. You working for Richard, I asked. He shook his head once. I work for outcomes, vague, professional. Dangerous. He slid a folded slip of paper across the table. Last warning, he said. After this, you're not a problem to pressure. You're a problem to erase. He stood and walked out as calmly as he'd arrived. No dramatics, no gun flash, no raised voice. That's how you know someone's real. We unfolded the paper. It wasn't a threat. It was an address. Warehouse District. Edge of the river. No traffic, no cameras, no witnesses. Logan swallowed. You think it's a trap? Yeah, I said. You think we're going anyway? Yeah. Because sometimes in this line of work, the only way forward is straight through the place they built to end you. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the diner sign. Night crept in like a slow tide. The tape sat heavy in my pocket. Every instinct I had was buzzing the same single word, careful. But above all that noise, one louder thought cut through. Melissa trusted strangers. To hear her voice after death, the least I could do was answer it while I was still alive. The sirens came closer until they weren't sounds anymore. They were colors washing through broken warehouse windows in red-blue waves. Richard sat in that chair like it had grown up around him. The same chair meant for me. Funny how control changes seats when the truth shows up. Logan stood watch over the two men on the floor. They weren't going anywhere. Pain is a great persuader, and gravity handled the rest. I stayed with Richard. His hands trembled, then went still, then trembled again. That's what happens when a man realizes the story isn't listening to him anymore. You think putting cuffs on me fixes anything? He said quietly. No, but it stops the bleeding. He gave a bitter laugh. You don't get it, Quinn. I cleaned up messes nobody else wanted. I did what the system wouldn't back then and now. There's always a man who says that right before prison, I replied. The one who thinks he's the hero in a world that just doesn't understand him. His eyes flashed. She was going to destroy herself. He snapped. She didn't know how this world works. Reputations matter. Stories get twisted. She wasn't strong enough. She was strong enough to tell the truth, I said, cutting him off. You just weren't strong enough to hear it. That landed. He sagged back, the fight leaving his shoulders like air leaking from a balloon. Outside, doors slammed. Radios crackled. Officers fanned out. But we were still inside the circle of that hanging light. Just me, him, and the lies he'd been feeding himself for years. He swallowed hard. I didn't mean for Melissa to die like that, he whispered. The gun was just supposed to scare her. A warning, make her step back. Someone switched. He stopped himself. Names don't always matter. Guilt does. You hired people who don't believe in half measures, I said. That's on you too. He didn't argue, because he couldn't. Truth has weight. It presses the air out of excuses. The officers finally poured in. Command's footsteps, the sound of handcuffs being unsnapped from belts. Logan looked at me. Ready? Yeah. I leaned close to Richard one last time. You don't own her story anymore, I said. You never did. He closed his eyes like the words hurt worse than the cuffs. They put chains on his wrists. He didn't resist. The last act was over. The audience already gone. His men were dragged up from the floor, swearing until pain made them quiet again. We stepped outside. Cold river wind hit my face, and finally I felt tired. Not the kind of tired sleep fixes. The kind that settles in your bones when you've been staring at what people do to one another for too long. Logan walked beside me. You think this sticks? He asked. Yeah, I said. Between the tape, the threats, the staged gun, and his own mouth, it sticks. He nodded, but neither of us smiled. Justice doesn't feel like fireworks. It feels like weight being set down that you still feel the ghost of. The paramedics checked the bruised muscle downstairs in that warehouse. Officers taped off doors. Detectives started taking statements. Papers began growing into files that would one day become court transcripts. But my head was back in the theater. Back in that spotlight. Back in that scream that wasn't acting. Melissa had known she was marked. She recorded her voice anyway. That takes a different kind of courage than most of us ever get to know. I stood at the edge of the pier, watching the water move dark and steady beneath the planks. Somewhere behind bars, Richard would be rewriting the story in his head, telling himself he'd been forced, cornered, misunderstood. People like him always do. But none of that mattered anymore, because the truth had finally been said out loud. And it wasn't going back in the box. Logan bumped my shoulder lightly. "You good?" "Yeah," I said. He knew I was lying and didn't call me on it. Good partner. City lights shimmered on the surface of the water like shaky handwriting. Cases don't end when the file closes. They echo. They live in the walls of the places they took root. They live in your head when you finally try to sleep. And this one wasn't done talking. Because somewhere in the middle of that warehouse chaos and siren noise, I realized something. We'd answered who and how. But why still had teeth. And teeth. Always. Bite again. They took Richard away in cuffs. Not screaming, not fighting, just quiet. That's how you know it's real for a man like him. When the room finally stops listening to him, the warehouse emptied slow, radios buzzing, boots scraping concrete, yellow tape whispering in the wind outside. One by one, the uniforms drifted away until it was just me, Logan, and the echo of everything that had just happened. Most cases end there. Paperwork, reports, statements. But this one kept tugging at me the way a loose thread won't stop catching on things. We had who, we had how, but why? Why still had teeth? Logan leaned against a crate, rubbing his knuckles. "You should see the smile on the Diaz face," he said. "Tape. Witnesses, threats, assault, attempted murder. This one's airtight." "Good," I answered. But my voice didn't sound like victory. He heard it too. "You're not done," he said quietly. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Because my head wasn't in the warehouse anymore. It was back in the Avalon, back in that spotlight, back in that single scream that didn't sound like acting, and back to a woman who recorded her own fear because nobody else would hold it for her. We drove. Not talking much. We didn't need to. Partners learn each other's silence better than their words. By the time I realized where my hands had steered the wheel, we were already there. The theater sat empty against the night sky, marquee lights dark, like even the building was trying not to be noticed anymore. We went inside. No crowds. No music. Just seats stretching out into shadows, and a stage that remembered exactly where she fell. I walked down the aisle slow, shoes whispering against carpet worn thin by applause. That didn't matter anymore. Logan stayed back, giving me space without making it a thing. That's another reason he's good. I stood center stage. Samey spot, same boards, same faint stain. No light could really erase. "You know," I said softly, "most killers don't actually care about death." My voice bounced up into the rafters and came back smaller. They care about silence, about control, about how the story gets told. Richard had killed twice across decades for the same reason. Not rage, not love, control. Melissa was finally taking that back, and he couldn't stand it. I could almost hear her voice in my head, the one from the tape. "If you're hearing this, something happened to me." It wasn't fear on that recording. It was acceptance and courage. She didn't die because she was weak. She died because she stopped being afraid of telling the truth. That makes people like Richard panic. Logan joined me on stage. "So," he said, "what's the why?" I took a breath. "He didn't kill to protect her," I said. He killed to protect the version of himself he built around her pain. Logan nodded slowly. He made himself the hero, he murmured. Yeah, I said. And when she didn't need a hero anymore, he finished it for me. He made himself the judge. Silence again, the quiet kind that doesn't feel empty. It feels heavy. I looked out over the empty seats. Funny thing about theaters. They're built for people to believe lies together. But tonight, the lie died here too. We stepped back out into the cool night air. City sounds drifted by again. Life kept going. Same as always, cases end on paper. They don't end in your head. Some stay. This one will. Logan clapped my shoulder. Drink? He asked. Ladder, I said. I've got a report to write. He smirked. You're gonna make it sound poetic, aren't you? I shrugged. I'm just going to make it sound true. He walked off toward the car. I stayed one more minute, hands in my pockets, looking up at the old marquee letters. Melissa Roy never got her closing bow, so I gave her one in my mind. Not applause, just respect. Then I turned and walked away. Another case closed. But here's the thing, they don't tell you before you take this job. Truth doesn't fix everything. It just turns the lights on and shows you what was already broken. And some nights, when the city gets quiet enough and the streets forget your name, the past whispers like an open door behind you. You don't always look back, but you always... Me name is Rafe Quinn. And if you're still listening, we're not done yet.